Welcome everybody to the Straight Shooter Wrestling Podcast. I'm one half of your host, Santi, here with my other half, Steve. How you doing?
Not too bad, buddy. How's the week been for you?
Oh, it's been pretty good. I can't complain. We had a shockingly amazing pay-per-view this past weekend. We absolutely trashed all over it prior to the card, but you know what, they made us eat our words. I was very pleasantly surprised with Hell in a Cell 2022, a very lackluster card on paper, but the boys and girls in the back delivered. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was one of those pay-per-views that you and I had very low hopes for, and we were pleasantly surprised. So, well done to everyone. I will even say the producers did a good job on this one, because I think even the storytelling was fantastic. And a big shout out to our YouTube channel, everybody that joined us in the live. I think we had up to 1,200 people at one point in our live on TikTok. And guys, don't forget that we always go live for all of the pay-per-views, or the premium live events that WWE mostly puts on. We do some AEW ones, but I just want to say thank you to everyone who made that live absolutely phenomenal. And again, blowing up the Twitter, over 600 followers on Twitter. We've broken 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. I think we went up 2,000 just in that live. Absolutely insane numbers. And Santi, do you mind if I do our weekly shout outs to the people listening around the world?
Yeah, who do we have?
We have, well, the first one I'm going to shout out just because it is the smallest little town I've ever heard of. Happy Valley Goose Bay, and that is just of the northwest of Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada.
Why do you live there, whoever's listening?
I have no idea. We're gonna stay in Canada for a second. We got Grand Prairie that jumped up on the blip today. I'm still shouting out my family in Victoria who have yet to listen. So Victoria, BC, hurry up and get smart. We're gonna go down to Costa Rica, San Juan, or San Jose, Costa Rica. And the final one that we are going to shout out today, Lima, Peru.
No way. All right. The Incas are listening. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Let's go.
Still no Falkland Islands. I'm sad. Still no Falkland Islands, but we're starting to warm up in Egypt though.
Oh, let's go. Straight shoot banner across the pyramids of Giza. But Steve, yes, today's podcast is brought to you by no one. We don't have any sponsors. So if you're listening and you want to give us money to sponsor something, maybe DraftKings or whatever you want us to peddle, we have zero morals. All right. Give us money and we will sponsor whatever it is that you want us to shout out. So long as the dollar price is right, we're ready to sell our souls, baby. But that being said, Steve, let's get into our topic of the show, because we've already sort of alluded about it. We're gonna talk about a particular performance in the Royal Rumble, and then we're going to expand on that conversation. We're gonna be talking first about the Cody Rhodes performance at Hell in a Cell, and then we will expand the conversation into talking about some of the most heroic performances in WWE/WWF or wrestling history. Now, I will say right now, okay, what Cody Rhodes did at Hell in a Cell, regardless of the severity of the injury, because there's so much debate about how rough of an injury it is. Look, the way I want to maybe give an example of is, like if you have a slight cut in your forehead, it's gonna bleed as if you're dying. Maybe a slight tear in your pec will bruise that way. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not gonna pretend to be a doctor. That being said, that is irrelevant. What Cody Rhodes did with that injury is nothing short of heroic and absolutely incredible, to the point where one of the major Cody Rhodes doubters, as he returned to WWE, had to just bow down, clap, and respect the ever-living crap out of this man, because what he did was nothing short of amazing. And on top of that, it wasn't just that he went through with the match. It was a 30-minute slobber knocker. It wasn't as if they were even working around his injury, Steve. They were
attacking it.
Yeah, it was used as a storyline component rather than as a crutch. I want to give you the floor here and just get your initial thoughts on Cody Rhodes' performance.
Honestly, Santi, you and I both have not been the greatest supporters of Cody Rhodes coming into the WWE. Just one of those guys coming back with a big contract. That's how we both really looked at it. I think you and I have been shouting to the ceiling that he's just mid card, mid card, mid card. Sunday night, Cody really made us eat our words, and I'll own up to it, and I'll be the first one to say, you know what? Yeah, we now need to literally focus a little bit on Cody Rhodes when he comes back come Rumble time.
Didn't you immediately buy an American Nightmare shirt right after this? Just come clean. Clean.
I may or may not have bought an American Nightmare shirt.
Hey, you know what? If you're going to get one after that performance, I'm not going to judge you, all right?
Yeah.
And that's coming from the person that bought $150 worth of John Cena gear in that same order. But I digress.
But where I was going with this, Santi, is you and I have both worked in the fitness industry. We've been around guys who have had pec injuries. For everyone saying that was makeup or that was a shoot,
You're
or whatever,
an idiot.
You're an idiot. Absolute idiot. That is one of the worst pec tears I have ever seen. The fact that like 3 days later the bruising was around his wrist just shows physically how bad that injury really is. Might be off the bone, might not be off the bone. I was watching a doctor on TikTok talking about what the pec injury is, and they were talking specifically about Cody Rhodes. Point being, this is a legit injury, and Cody Rhodes was literally a one-armed man in a proverbial ass-kicking contest, and he fought back heroically. And that is our topic of the show, and why Cody Rhodes deserves to be acknowledged, and for his absolute fantastic display in this match. But let's not take anything away from Seth Rollins, because Seth Rollins was the architect in that match. I hate to the proverbial architect, but he was the architect in that match. His storytelling was just as good, if not better than Cody's, because Seth had less to work with, really. He had to bring out the whole new dynamic and work around the injury to work the injury in, and he did that flawlessly. So let's not take away from what Seth Rollins did as well.
Yeah, I feel like you hit it on the head there. You know, when it comes to professional wrestling, when somebody is injured and you are trying to work through the injury to complete the match, the person that needs to be careful isn't the injured person. It's the person that isn't injured, because now not only is your career is always on the line when you're in the ring, but not only is your safety on the line because you're working with somebody who might not be able to lift you fully, who might miss a cue because of the injury, but now you are the one that is dictating whether or not that injury is going to get worse based on what moves you call, what cadence you use, how fast you do moves, and all of that fell on Seth Rollins. Now, again, the heroic performance, we're going to give it to Cody, but the professionalism through and through goes to Seth Rollins, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said is like the move set and the cadences and the speed of the match. And understandably, you and I were sitting there, and it was the first time I think you and I have ever watched the match and like hardly talked.
I was uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable. Like there were spots in that match where I physically thought I was going to be sick. I don't know how Cody was not throwing up halfway through. I think he actually looked like he was about to throw up at one point. But where I was going with this is Cody, like the speed of that match was obviously slower than usual. But if you are not a massive, well-versed wrestling fan, you would never have noticed. Never have noticed that really those guys were only going at a pace of about 5 or 6 when they normally go 8 or 9, maybe 10. So it was if they were able to hide that well, it shows just the ability of both parties in the match to put on a 4-star match for a Hell in a Cell that everyone's expecting to have brutality, and there was brutality in that, but it was brutality in like that uncomfortable sense. So
Mhm.
it was. I give it to him. Give Seth all the credit you want, but Cody, goddamn man, you're nuts. He's nuts.
Here's another reason why this match made me gain so much respect for Cody Rhodes, and why I want to label this as a heroic performance. This wasn't a WrestleMania payday. You know, it's not as if this was going to be in front of 100,000 people in LA, or at a SummerSlam in a stadium, or at a Royal Rumble in a stadium. This was a B tier pay-per-view where everybody would have been perfectly okay with Cody missing. I mean, our champion wasn't even at this pay-per-view. Everybody would have been okay with Cody Rhodes either doing a match that is worked in a way where it was done in 2 minutes, there was a run-in interference, or he takes off the jacket and the ref is like, no, not at all,
not happening.
not happening. Everybody would have been okay. I don't think that there would have been a soul, and that's Chicago, a booing crowd. Nobody would have booed. After seeing that injury, absolutely no one would have booed.
I think him taking that jacket off in the slow, methodical way he did, there was a hush over
Yeah.
the. You don't put Chicago quiet at all. Chicago is that town that never stops, and there was a hush. Like most people, you'd be like, "Oh," it wasn't even really there. It was somewhat there, but then it was just a very small hush.
Dude,
And I was
this
like,
is going to be a weird comparison, but it gave me vibes of whenever somebody would get picked to participate in the Hunger Games, right? I don't know if you've seen those movies, but like everybody's just sort of like quiet and like concerned, and you don't know what's
yeah.
going to happen next. And I feel like that's what the crowd felt. And this is what I mean. Like, this was a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, and Cody still made the decision. Apparently, he made the call that I'm going to go out there and I'm going to bust my ass off and I'm going to perform because that's what the people came to see. We are the only Hell in a Cell match in a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And he went out there and he didn't just deliver in a match that we as an audience would have expected, which would have been a very safe match that, again, could have had a run in, ways to protect Cody, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, they went through what I think was the original choreography of the match, just at a slower pace, which actually I think that slower pace, funny enough, added to the uncomfortableness of everything that was going on, because it brought that sense of realism. Like, there is somebody in there who is vulnerable, like actually genuinely vulnerable, that at any moment could implode because their body just stops working. So, and I think that's what all wrestling fans were thinking. And this is why I say that everybody would have been perfectly okay with him, or the WWE saying, no, this match is not going through, but it went through anyway. And it's going to be remembered, Steve. This match is going to be remembered as an all-time WWE moment. Not saying it's the greatest match of all time. This is a memorable WWE moment. I am saying Mankind falling off the cage. I am saying Undertaker losing his streak. It's going to be remembered in that light because this is so unique, so different. This will not be forgotten.
No, this is going to go down as a moment of the year in 2022 in pro wrestling. Simple as that. Nothing is going to beat that. There is nothing else that can top what Cody Rhodes has done this year. Like, just give him that award, give him that for the slammy that nobody cares about. But at the end of the day, when all the journalists and all the people on the dirt sheets start writing at the year end, what was the moment of the year? First ballot, no one else is even in the spectrum. It will be Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins at Hell in a Cell. The final thing I want to mention on this point of this match, back to the injury for a moment. The swelling at the start was bad. Okay. But at the end of it, Cody Rhodes had the arm the size of John Cena's. It
Yeah.
was massive. So just to show how bad the injury was, he was 3 to 4 times the size of what his normal arm is. That is nasty. Like, I was just I again, physically uncomfortable, but just give this man as much credit. This is going to go down in history as one of the greatest moments of all time, one of the greatest matches of all time in Hell in a Cell. And we just did our top 5 Hell in a Cell, and I'm sorry, even though it didn't have all those cell moments, it had mini ones, it didn't need it. It will go down as one of the top 10 Hell in a Cell moments of all time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, the picture of Cody is, I think, is going to be alongside the picture of Austin bleeding out. I really genuinely believe that. I really think that it's going to be one of those moments that is going to be compared. And hell, we're comparing them today, really, because we're going to be comparing some other moments that wrestling fans consider either kind of like heroic performances or, you know, extraordinary performances in the light of adversity. Now, this adversity was a real life one, right? But it's the world of WWE where adversities are put into place in terms of storylines to create interest and care. And I think that this next heroic performance that we're going to talk about was WWE at its finest in terms of creating that storyline roadblock for a superstar that they had to climb and they had to overcome. And we're going to be talking about Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30. So, Steve, for you and for everybody listening, let me give the rundown of what Daniel Bryan had to do that night. First, he was the opener against a Hall of Famer in Triple H, and arguably potentially the best match of the night. Yes. And it ended with Daniel Bryan winning, but then Triple H, and here's what I mean with the storyline, Triple H putting his arm through hell and destroying it, leaving Daniel Bryan as a one-arm man going into the main event against 2 more Hall of Famers in Batista and Randy Orton, where he was the obvious underdog in both stature, strength, ability, all of this stuff. And of course, the fact that he only had one arm, and then he came out victorious in the match by submitting Batista. First match, 17 minutes. Second match, 25 minutes. An all-time great performance in a single night. I have to say that this falls under the category of heroic in the context of storyline, not in the context of realism like Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, so we're talking about a storyline, Santi, that, you know what, the comments are gonna say, hey, common Steve L like usual, and personally I don't care.
Hey,
This was
keep saying it, we're just gonna make it a t-shirt and profit off of it.
This was a storyline I couldn't stand. But I always respect a good storyline, so I'm contradicting myself. But it was just one I didn't really pay attention to much, but watching it develop over the night, you saw the writing in the stars and how this was all going to play out. And it's almost like a very slow, methodical beatdown. But you know, it still came out to be perfection. Going in first match against Triple H, and again, like you said, arguably the best match of the night, arguably, and still being like beaten down by the end of it. He didn't walk out of there comfortable. It wasn't like he had all the momentum. If anything, he was set back a couple of steps. And we don't even know if that injury was real or fake. It could have been a real injury. We don't know. But going in, that Batista, I really for some reason thought myself in that pay-per-view, I thought Batista for some reason was going over.
I thought so too. I'm with you.
It was the entrance that did it for me, and I'm like, okay, like I know where they're trying to push this for it to be like Daniel Bryan's moment, and they tend to give the entrance to the person who wins the match. So like, okay, Batista's getting this very interesting Hollywood-esque entrance, and I'm like, okay, so Batista's gonna go over in this. And they did put on a great, what was it, 25 minute match. And it was it wasn't a spot fest, but like it was a don't sit down or don't look away because you're gonna miss something. The transitions of everything from like the original like gang up and beat on Daniel Bryan, and then the transition to the singles competitors going at it, and then like the counts and the submission spots, they were all
Hey,
just so well.
and let's not forget the Batista bomb into an RKO through the Spanish announce table on Daniel Bryan.
Yo, put that Spanish announce table in the Hall of Fame. Let's
That's what
go.
we're saying. That's what we're saying. Hey, heroic performance to the Spanish announce table.
Oh, but what I'm saying is they were able to put on a phenomenal match and still make him look like the underdog, but not like he wasn't worth anything. If that makes any sense, how I put that across. So no, heroic performance again, not my favorite, not my most favorite storyline, but you can't help but respect the storyline and
Yeah.
how they did it.
Yeah. And this is, I know it's not your favorite storyline, but I believe that this was WWE at its finest. In I accidentally creating this because this was not their intended course of action, but whether it was accidental or not, they did a great job at creating the semblance of an insurmountable journey for Daniel Bryan, and making it even more insurmountable by having to face 3 members of Evolution in the same night.
Can I just point something out about this storyline that just came back to me? This was during the whole massive anti-bullying program that WWE was running, and all Stephanie McMahon was doing for the 6 months leading into this was bullying the absolute crap out of Daniel Bryan. And I just that was one of the ones I thought was absolutely hilarious to see like Stephanie outside doing the whole anti-bullying campaign at the schools, and then like coming on and like standing over this man and making him feel like he's like a freshman in high school. Anyways,
Hey,
sorry, keep going.
that's where we got the term "you're a B
B
plus
plus
player."
player. Yeah.
And what dude, that's like the worst insult. That is the worst insult. I'd rather be called an absolute failure than a B plus player. I'm gonna be honest with you. All right, let's move this train along here, Steve, and we'll actually turn the clock back a little bit here by talking about 2006, shortly after the passing of the legend of legends, Eddie Guerrero. We had Rey Mysterio at the 2006 Royal Rumble putting on a 62-minute performance, coming in at number 2 alongside Triple H, and both men go right to the distance, and Rey Mysterio winning it after a 62-man Iron Man performance. Did you watch this Royal Rumble back then or no?
This was basically paying homage to my favorite wrestler of all time. This was definitely one I wasn't missing. I've never been a massive Rey Mysterio fan, but I would have rioted and probably broke my TV if he had not won that Royal Rumble. And the way he was able to pay homage to Eddie in so many instances during that match just made it so much better. It just showed the connection between the two brothers or best friends who became brothers, and just the connection that they had in the business and the industry. Ray was able to carry Eddie's legacy pretty much through this entire match, and you just saw the emotion in his eyes during so many of the spots and so many of the eliminations. And it was the little man versus all the giants, and really he outdid himself. It's almost like Cody's performance against Seth in the Hell in a Cell. Um he did a lot of things he didn't need to do in this Rumble match, but it just showed how much this meant. That's that's how I felt about this match. There was some world-class athletes in that Rumble, especially having Hunter go right to the end as well.
Well, the final three gives me vibes of Daniel Bryan, because it was Rey Mysterio, Triple H, and Randy Orton. Rey Mysterio was in the ring in the final three with two absolute monsters of the business, not just monsters of the business, but untouchables at that time, because Randy Orton was the wonderkin, right? Yep. Like, he was the next star. Yeah. And then we had Triple H, the proverbial barrier, right? Who had all, this was just after the Reign of Terror, thank God, because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten this moment. But, you know, you're connecting this to the Cody Rhodes match. I'm going to connect this to the Randy Orton moment, to the Daniel Bryan moment, because, you know, we had two of the same guys that the little guy had to overcome, which just kind of goes to show, you know, how WWE, how highly WWE sees the likes of Randy Orton and Triple H. Obviously, that's an obvious statement, but like, when they are your final boss, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're your final boss for the little guy to overcome, and they've been the final boss since 2006 all the way up until now, basically. That's very impressive. But the Royal Rumble itself, this was so a couple facts about this. So right before this, we had the backstage segment of Rey Mysterio pulling the ball, and right before he opens it, he prays to the heavens and Eddie, please give me a good number. Opens it up, it's number 2, and then Rey Mysterio laughs like, this is classic Eddie. And another fact is, to date, with the exception of the non-canon greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia, this is the longest Iron Man performance in Royal Rumble history. Still has not been beaten to this day, and I don't think that it needs to be beaten. I think that this is one of those Royal Rumble facts. You know how they do the vignettes, like the Royal Rumble facts? I want this one to be on there forever.
Oh, so do I. I think there's gonna, well, I think it actually got broken because of the greatest Royal Rumble, but like Kane's eliminations in the Royal Rumble, that's one I never want to really see be broken, and I think Roman's close.
Oh, I think Brock broke it. Was
Brock? I think he was one short.
Was he one short? I can't remember.
He was one short.
Yeah, when before he got eliminated by McIntyre, because he was tossing out everybody. I thought he might have broken it. We'll double check that.
We'll double check it. But Rey's, how long Rey has lasted, I honestly believe it does not need to be broken. Nobody needs to outdo him in this performance, because of the significance and the importance of this Rumble, and who he was doing it for. So
reporter Santiago here, coming in from Straight Shooter Wrestling Podcast, just reporting in. Brock Lesnar does hold the record. That Royal Rumble, he eliminated 13 people.
Oh no, I meant all time. How many is
individual? Okay, I thought you meant like single Rumble eliminations.
No, I meant individually of all time. I still think Kane or Roman holds that.
I will check for you. But yeah, any other thoughts that you want to add to this match?
The only other thing I want to add, and it's not that match specifically, it's still a Rey Mysterio performance, and it is the Raw tribute episode to Eddie Guerrero that Rey ended up going in and having a banger of a technical wrestling match against Shawn Michaels on that Monday Night Raw. They both came out in the I'm Your Poppy shirts. They shook hands in the middle of the ring and then went to work like the professionals they were. And honestly, I'm one of those ones that think that show should never have happened. They should have just canceled it. Like another topic we're going to get into very soon in this episode, but it's one of those ones where if you are a world-class performer, like, you go out, the show must go on, I guess. But those two put on, especially Rey, the emotions he would have probably been going through that day, just incredible. So that's all I have to say about like heroic performances when it comes to Rey Mysterio.
Absolutely, I'm with you. All right, let's move on to what I personally think is the better version of WrestleMania, and it's the lead up to Kofi Mania. We are talking about the Kofi Kingston gauntlet match, so that he could get his shot at WrestleMania for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against Daniel Bryan. Now, I'm going to list the people that he had to be in the ring with for 45 minutes. Okay. We had the Viper, Randy Orton, the Samoan submission machine, Samoa Joe, the Bar, both Cesaro and Sheamus, and Rowan. Kofi Kingston beat all of them to earn this shot, but of course, as Vince McMahon says, no chance in hell. He comes out, ruins the moment by saying there is one more opponent, and that opponent being the champion at the time, Daniel Bryan, which is honestly kind of poetic, having Daniel Bryan be the antagonist in a storyline that is very much mimicking a very similar storyline that he was in. Kofi Kingston loses after 45 minutes, still puts on one of the most heroic performances, I think, in modern era, without, any sort of real life trauma like the death of Eddie Guerrero or Cody Rhodes' injury. This was just in-ring storytelling that made you care for Kofi. It made you actually believe that Cody deserves this shot, but also legitimizes Kofi by saying he beat all of these dudes. Daniel Bryan should be nothing at WrestleMania. He deserves Daniel Bryan. Of course, he gets screwed out of his moment, eventually does make his way onto WrestleMania, but one more thing to add, Steve, that was on free television.
That was on free television. And the funniest part about this, Santi, I have still never seen this match. You and I had to talk about this coming into recording this episode, and this is one of these matches that we've talked about and I have to go watch. But the one thing I do want to say to this, I'm seeing a trend over all of these, and maybe there is like an at the end of this that we have to say, performance wise, we have to give some respect to Randy Orton. He's involved in all of this.
Oh yeah, I'm actually, that's unintentional though.
This is completely unintentional, and I do believe, I think we're done with Randy Orton now, but everything that we have so far talked about, Randy Orton has been that stepping stone for everyone, and that just shows the respect and the leadership that Randy Orton has been given and earned in the back by Vince and the whole locker room. So I'm just saying, that's the one thing. I need to go watch this match and put some respect on Kofi's name. That's on me. But honestly, I don't have nothing against Kofi Kingston. I've just never seen this match.
Yeah. I'll add a little bit more conjecture here before we move on. Another reason why I believe that this is so memorable and, again, a quote-unquote heroic performance. This is a career mid-carder. Right? This is a career mid-carder finally being given the opportunity to shine. Not being given the brass ring, but being told, go get it.
Go earn it.
Go earn it. Here is your shot on free television, being seen by millions of people, and we are going to put you in the ring with some of the best that we got. Go earn it, dude. Either float or flounder. And he floated like a motherfucker, because that performance was absolutely stellar. The crowd was through the roof. The announcers were feeling Kofi. All right. Michael Cole is underrated. We can do an overrated, underrated on Michael Cole, but Michael Cole is underrated and elevating people during matches. And he elevated Kofi Kingston to the point where you, as a fan, you needed this. You needed to see Kofi Kingston win. You felt like you were feeling the weight that Kofi Kingston was feeling. And speaking of weight, his facial expressions, his body language throughout the entire match was that of a man that was beaten but not defeated, if that makes sense. He was being put through the grinder, and his body was feeling it, and his body language was feeling it. But that face throughout the entire match was a face of determination, and the face of somebody who is hungry to deliver on this one moment that he's finally been given after 10 years of being a tag team specialist, a mid-carder, a comedy act, a fake Jamaican.
Rumble, a Royal Rumble spot competitor.
Yeah. So I love that WWE gave this moment to somebody who really put in the work to earn it. Unfortunately, the only other person that I can think of in history that got this moment is somebody who fucking ruined it, is Chris Benoit. But it really gives me vibes of that. It really gives me vibes of, here is the moment for the workhorse. You're never going to get this moment again, Kofi, because we're not going to put the strap on you again. So it's your job to make this moment memorable. And he did.
Yeah. And guys, no, we're not going to talk about Chris Benoit's performance leading into WrestleMania. So don't ask.
No.
Anyway, Santi, that was a good one. Let's move on to which one do you want? Let's go into a funny one.
Sure. Let's do it.
Let's go into this is one I picked out of the sky, and I think honestly, if you have ever had an injury like this, you really need to understand how good this man no-sold it. And this is Vince McMahon tearing both quads at Royal Rumble 2005, the botch fest that was the double elimination, Batista and John Cena. Santi, I've pulled a muscle or two in my life, but I have never ripped one quad, let alone both, off the bones, and never been able to no-sell it like Vince McMahon did. This man power walks his ass down the ramp, or it wasn't even a ramp, it was just a flat aisle for that. Does the worst slide into the ring, goes to stand up, and literally jelly legs himself to the ground. And he just sits there for a second, cross-armed.
You just know he's dying in pain inside.
Oh, honestly, like, I would be rolling around on the floor. Like,
I stub my toe and I cry.
Exactly. And this guy rips both quads at the same time off the bone, sits there and literally detentions these guys for 7 to 10 minutes trying to figure out what has just gone on, and then finally gets his help to the back and then goes to hospital, obviously. But Santi, help me here. How does he do that?
Dude, because he's Vincent Kennedy McMahon. That's how. He's the only man that could no-sell a gruesome career-altering injury the way that he did. But yes, I would say that this does fall as heroic because it fell onto him to salvage a botched main event, right? And he came out there. Obviously, I'm sure he wasn't expecting to tear both of his quads, tore both his quads, and still managed to make that on-the-fly decision, which was it was a great decision to restart it, all while being in that Vince McMahon character, the pissed off, are you fucking kidding me right now look that only Vince McMahon can deliver, all without even so much as a grimace of pain in his face. But like I said, I know that man was dying on the inside.
If you guys ever want to watch a hilarious interview, first off, go watch Vince recalling how he felt during that moment on the Pat McAfee show, the recent one that he was just on. The other one you should definitely go watch is the Edge interview when he was in the UK on how he recalls Vince tearing his quads. Because if you guys don't remember, Edge was the third last elimination, or the second last elimination in that Rumble. And as he's walking to the back, Vince is power walking past Edge. And then Edge goes into the back and hears that Vince is injured. And apparently everyone in the locker room left because they were too scared to see Vince after this. Because he was so, you have to go watch this interview. I might even throw the link up in the bio of this video. But this was one of those ones where everyone has a story about what happened when Vince tore his quads. So is it heroic? Yes. Is it a wrestling match? No. Do we still acknowledge it? Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely. So that. All right, we're moving on. Unfortunately, to something a little bit more serious. But up until now, we've talked about in-ring performances. Maybe not so much the Vince one, but I guess even that happened in the ring. But we're actually going to move on and talk about our 1999 commentary team of Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. During the broadcast of the 1999 Over the Edge pay-per-view, where Owen Hart fell and died in front of everybody. And I wanted to add this on here because this was a situation where you could tell neither Jim Ross nor the King felt that it was appropriate to continue on with the show. But the powers that be made the show continue, and so the show must go on. And I did not watch this live. This is something that I've watched after the fact, is because it's one of those Smithsonian moments in WWE history. It's one of those moments that people will always go back to. And the fact that these two were able to maintain a level of professionalism and continuing to call the show while still being able to have the correct level of empathy for what they have just seen, to me, just speaks levels to their bravery to be able to deliver that message to the audience at home, because that had to have been absolutely heartbreaking. But then also the professionalism of being able to not necessarily move past that moment, but pivot around that moment and call the match that, we could debate all day as to whether or not the matches should have gone on, but they did go on, and the guys and girls who were in the ring deserved to have their matches called. And they had their matches called by two consummate professionals in Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler, again, in the face of probably the worst tragedy that they've witnessed with their own eyes.
Yeah. So for Santi, for reference, I did watch this one live. I remember I always used to sit on the floor right in front of my dad's massive. Remember those big Panasonic TVs that weighed like 200 pounds?
Oh, yeah.
So we had one of those, and I used to sit on the floor right in front of it. And I remember the one thing I remember is Jerry the King Lawler's eyes. So if you guys didn't watch this, they obviously panned to the fans, but it was also when they finally, like, things started to get released, and Jerry the King Lawler was actually one of the first people to get to Owen. He actually left commentary and ran over and was checking on him. And then when he came back, his eyes were different. They were almost soulless, if that's a way of showing the expression. There was nothing there. It was just a blank ghost face. And my
A man in
mom,
shock. It was a man in
yeah,
shock.
exactly. And I remember looking at my mom, and I was 11 or 12 when this happened, and I looked over and I said, "Is this real?" And my mom just herself sat there in shock, because we all knew what was happening. But to go back to Jr. and uh, Jerry the King Lawler, um, they didn't deserve or need, sorry, they were the right people to bring it across, but they should never have had to be those
Yeah,
people to bring it across, if that's what I'm saying.
I get what you're
um
saying. Yeah.
I think that should have been a Vince McMahon owning it and coming out and coming on commentary. I personally, that's my opinion. And I also don't think they should have announced it during the broadcast of the show. Because that I don't remember a match after that. I remember the announcement, and it was, I think the world was shocked at that point. And so to talk about a performance, no wonder they are always going to go down as the greatest commentary team of all time, because they were able to adapt to any situation at any point of a botch or a broken leg or a Spanish announce table break or the worst thing that could have ever happened in the ring. But kudos, absolute kudos to Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross for their performance and the ability to stay completely professional and not make it the center of attention and able to move past it, like you said, and still call a mid-tier pay-per-view and just get to go home, basically, just to get out. And they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, this is one of those moments that I think every wrestling fan should just experience, right? You need to go back and understand what happened that night, and you need to watch the show and yeah, and see for yourself what we're talking about, because it's easy, you know, when there's the visual representation of heroism like Cody Rhodes or the Daniel Bryans, right? But it's more difficult to convey here in this podcast again, like just the difficulty of what Jerry the King Lawler and what Jim Ross had to do. It's something that I would never wish upon anybody at all in any way, shape, or form. But you know, they were the guys that were pegged for the job, and I think those were, like you said, the only guys that you want in that position.
Exactly. And honestly, I hope we never have to experience that again. And I hope no commentary team ever has to do that again. But just for everyone, like Santi said, it is a pay-per-view that you should watch, but it is not a pay-per-view you should watch for the wrestling. It is just, it's one of those historical ones that just needs to be, if you're a wrestling fan and you want you can't, you see it once, you'll never forget it again.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to say is, yeah, definitely this is not for the entertainment factor. I'm saying it's one of those moments in history that we cannot let forget.
Yes.
Right? We cannot forget this moment. So younger wrestling fans, you should go back and watch and experience this moment, even though, you know, it's 20 plus years after the fact, because generations of wrestling fans, we shouldn't let this moment ever be forgotten.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's wrap it up here, Steve, with the final one. I decided to add this one because it's it's the greatest ass kicking I've ever seen a man receive, and just continues to get up and receives another ass kicking 5 times worse than the one before that, and that is Mankind at this moment infamous Hell in a Cell match against the Undertaker, where he got tossed off the cell, through the cell, and then got absolutely beaten down with chairs. So Steve, this is definitely right up your alley. I want to give you the mic here.
Mick Foley, aka Mankind, King of the Ring, 1998, arguably, in Santi's words, the greatest spot fest of all time. I remember this was one of the first times that they really utilized the cage or the cell as this overpowering being. When Taker was up there and Mick Foley were up there, you're like, oh man, it would be funny if one of them went off, like, but they'll never do that. And then all of a sudden, Undertaker, for some reason in his mind, decides it's a good idea to yeet Mick Foley.
A full yeet.
Like, it was full send into the Spanish announce table.
There it is again. Doesn't stop.
And it's good old JR. Oh my God, he's killed him. Oh my God. The match, stop the match. One of the greatest calls of all time. And you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, okay, the match is done. Like, this is good. I know it's no DQ, but they're just going to stop this match. No, they don't. Mick Foley decides to get up and climb. Oh, no, they tried to walk him out, didn't they? They tried to take him out. And he turns around and he goes, no, I want to be obliterated in a 20 by 20 squared circle even more. I'm going to go crawl my ass up, my 300 and some odd pound ass, to the top of the cell again and let this overpowering dead man beat me down more. Now, for people who have never seen this match, just remember, the cell today is actually a properly constructed structure. This thing was held together with zip ties. Okay? These are a 300 and some odd pound man and another 300 and some odd pound dead man on the top being held up by zip ties. Now, they go through their spots and their motions, and then all of a sudden, there's a chair that Mick Foley has brought up, and Undertaker back suplexes him on the chair through the cell, and because of poor trajectory, Mick Foley's face comes down on the corner of the falling chair that is under him, and it decides to shoot this tooth up and bring it out his nose. The match is done there, right, guys? No. The one thing, Santi, I remember all of this, it's Terry Funk. Terry Funk trying to tell Mick Foley, stop, you're done, you've done us.
And just for younger fans, Terry Funk is the only person potentially crazier than Mick Foley.
Terry Funk is the originator of the death match. Okay? This man has been in more death matches than I think New Jack and the rest of ECW put together. Okay? When he's saying enough, like, you know there's something wrong. And a heavily concussed, bleeding, beaten up Mick Foley decides to give us the show that a Hell in a Cell deserves, and he goes back for his final crucifixion, we'll call it. And he is pinned with the 1, 2, 3. And if that is not a heroic yet stupid, but heroic performance, Santi, I don't know what is. Like, no one's ever going to put on that performance again. Ever. It's one of those ones, again, if you want to know your history of pro wrestling, it's one of those ones that will never happen again, but you must watch once.
Yes, it's not a long watch either. All of this happens in like 10 minutes, guys. It's a very, very quick, lightning fast 10 minutes. But yeah, to me, like, it's almost slapstick comedy at this point. It kind of reminds me of in terms of severity, it's not even close, but like, just follow me here. It reminds me of Dolph Ziggler versus Goldberg, where Goldberg comes out, spears him, goes away. Dolph Ziggler's like, I want more. Out comes Goldberg, spears him. Goldberg leaves. Dolph Ziggler's like, I'm not done yet. Out comes Goldberg, spears him, and leaves. It's just, it's slapstick. It's just like this crazy lunatic of a man continuing to come back for more, and every time he comes back, he gets it 10 times worse. This is what I mean by it's slapstick. It's almost comedic to a point because it's so ridiculous, right? What's happening is very scary and very dangerous, but it's so dangerous and so ridiculous that the fans and the audience are just left to believe, even now today, that like, yeah, like that's normal. It's just normal mankind. No, motherfucker. None of that is normal. None of what happened to that man should happen to anybody in professional wrestling.
I'm sorry, we've seen the spot fest of Shane physically jumping himself off the cell. I think is Shane the only one? Oh, Rikishi. Sorry. Rikishi's the other one who's gone off the cell. I can't remember really anyone else that's gone from the top. But when you are yeeted and the person controlling your fall is controlled by the person throwing you.
Yeah, what aim by the Undertaker, by the way?
Exactly, because that Spanish announce table is only about 6 feet wide, or 6 feet long, 2 feet wide. The fact that he got that trajectory perfect, and I still think another comedy spot in this is when Mick Foley is laying there. His leg is under the barricade, under someone's seat, and you see these really scuffed up white Nikes of someone, and he's just trying to move out of the way for this dead body. Oh man, like honestly, the way you described it while you were describing it of the Goldberg Dolph Ziggler moment, I was thinking exact same thing, but Ambrose and Lesnar. Where Ambrose took that beating from Lesnar and then laughed it off and said, "Come, give me some more." I thought that was great, and though you have perfectly put that. And Undertaker, credit to him for staying again in character, because I'm worried at this point. I've literally knocked this man out.
Yeah, if I was the Undertaker, I'd be like, oh fuck.
But no, Santi, like that was one of those matches where, like, again, if you're a wrestling fan and you have never seen it, first off, I'm not giving you the title of a wrestling fan if you've never seen that match. But heroism and overall fantastic world-class well, not world-class, it's more of being a stunt double or a stunt
No, he was no double. He was the stunt dummy.
being the stunt dummy. He did a great job at it, and for whatever the 10 to 12 minutes that will live on in infamy because of that performance. So
No, I couldn't agree with you more. But Steve, that is going to be the end of our show. If you happen to listen all the way through, please make sure to subscribe here over on YouTube. If you're listening to podcast services around the globe, whether that's Apple Podcast, Spotify, or any podcast service that you're listening to, please make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're on. And if you're on a platform that allows to leave reviews, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review or whatever a positive review might be. We would really appreciate that. If you're on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe. Turn on your notifications, because we are uploading 3 times per week. You don't want to miss that. And of course, let's give the floor over to Steve. Steve, where can people find you?
guys, I will soon be back on Twitch, so please give me a follow on twitch.tv/Mr. Tesh. And then obviously you can find me on our TikTok, which we have just broken 355,000 followers at Straight Shoot. And then also on Twitch, on TikTok, Mr. is where you can find me. Santi, what about you? I just blew that one.
Yeah, well done. You can find me over on twitch.tv/SantiZap, and of course over on the Straight Shoot TikTok. That's all I will pimp out for now. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you the next couple days with a video if you're here on YouTube, but if you're on podcast services, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Later.